It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This is the Cosmick Voice. Cosmick Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cosmick Voice. This is Season 5, Episode 12. I am here with my co-host, Chris Natalini.
What up? What up?
And I am Mick Michaels. Welcome back, everyone, to another show. Chris, my good brother, how are you?
What is up, man? I am doing fabulous. Fabulous. The time of recording this, it is cold. Very cold. Very cold.
And getting colder by the hour. Yeah.
That's right. I'm looking at you. You got your COS beanie on.
I know, inside, right?
Inside.
That's how cold it is. It's just brutal, man.
It is brutal. Today's been brutal. You know, we've been so spoiled because we've had such a decent run of weather other than the rain. But, you know, temperature-wise, it hasn't been bad.
It's been an easier winter. We haven't had snow, a little bit of flurry, but that's nothing. A little more rain. I'll take it that way. But right now, February is in like a beast.
Oh, came in like a lion.
And tomorrow is going to be even colder. Now, of course, yeah, this is just crazy. So, I don't know. I got my Alaska jacket, everything ready to go. But again, I can't believe it's so cold. It's Pennsylvania. It's winter.
It is.
And Puxatawny, it doesn't matter. It's either 6 more weeks of winter or
6 more weeks.
Yeah.
I'd have threw him across the... No, not really.
Nah, because, you know, he grabs you. They'll tear you up, them guys.
You know, it's such a cool thing, man. Like, straight up. Like, I watch the news. Like, that whole thing. I am in, man. I am here for Puxatawny Phil and that whole thing. I swear, I told my wife the other day, I swear, by the time I die, I will be at Puxatawny on Groundhog Day. I don't know when. Because, you know, people buy these things years in advance. But if I got to drive up there and sleep in my car, I am going to Puxatawny. I want to be there one time just to see this thing. Because it is a spectacle.
It is. Actually, believe it or not, my wife had texted me. She goes, maybe we should go up there. And I didn't provoke it. And I was like, wow. Chris and I had this conversation last year. And
that's right. We did.
We had this conversation last year. And how it's like usually booked up for years in advance. It's crazy up there. So I said, hey, listen, let's do it. I'll go up. Why not? You know, we'll go up a day or two before. We'll stay a day after and then kind of see the sights or whatever. Because there's a lot of other things to do up there than just watch some little rodent in a suit and tie come out and I don't even know what he does. But then the whole world goes, yeah, okay. And I said to my daughter, I says, listen, as far as I know, spring is March 21st. That's what I'm living for. 6 weeks, one way, the other way. March 21st, that's when they make the change. So, but it's already getting lighter, longer, right?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
At least over here.
Yes.
So I'm excited about that. And then after this whole change, we'll never have to change back again. Still not sure what that means or how that affects anything and why my tax dollars paid for that decision. But I'll take it. I paid for it, so I'm going to take it.
Yeah, that's right. If you paid for it, you enjoy it.
That's right. You enjoy
it. And you'll like it.
That's right. Exactly. Oh, my gosh. You got anything else exciting going on? What do you got going on?
No, brother, no. Just, you know, you and I were talking off the air. You know, we both have some things coming up and, you know, looking forward to some spring, you know, with shows and stuff like that. Playing-wise, not going to shows. Well, of course, going to shows, but playing shows. We both have some things on the calendar. We'll be on stage, hopefully sooner than later. Moving on, at least for me, getting a new chapter started with the new project. And that's it, man. That's it. That's all I got right now.
Awesome.
That's it. Yeah.
Listen,
that's it.
One step closer to whatever it is you're trying to achieve, right? We do it moment by moment, day by day, week by week, so on and so forth. And then in those times, the door opens and you can plan a little further down if you need to. You got to make the most of it. If you get too far down in the pike, you kind of get lost into here and now. Believe me, I've done that way too many times. sometimes I'm having that issue right now this year. I got things happening so much, I kind of lose sight of what's happening right now, and then I'm missing something, so, But
we've talked about that plenty of times.
Yeah, plenty of times. So it happens to us even with the best intentions or with the best awareness. Sometimes things start coming at you left and right. And as I told my bass player the other day, I says, I'm trying to make it all work if possible. Right? If it looks good enough, there's no reason why we can't pursue it. But if it's too much of a struggle, then we just let it pass. You know what I mean? We let it pass, see what happens, and take the good with what comes. And that's it. So
absolutely. Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
It's Russ the Boss.
Take it down.
This is Stephen Pearson from Rat, the Rat Bastard. You're listening to the Cosmick Voice.
All right, so tonight's topic is cancel or not cancel. And what we're talking about, I guess, basically is the show. Do we cancel the show? Do we not cancel the show? Now, before I let Chris go on his tirade, I do want to preface that we came to this topic a while ago because during the height of, not the height of COVID per se when things were shut down, but as things started to open up again last year, the end of the year before, and people started kind of working again, bands started going out, clubs started creating events, it became this thing where it was like almost too easy to cancel the show. Like, now I realized at one time the numbers were going up real high and more people were being affected. So it became more common that someone you would know or someone in your band or a band that you were going to go see possibly could have contracted COVID, and then the show would have to be canceled. Rightly so, right? We're not trying to spread the disease. But there was also this trend that bands were canceling maybe more often than they should, right? And sometimes COVID became the easy excuse. So when we started to talk about this topic, that was a point. But then it was like other reasons that people start canceling. And bands have to decide, like, is it worth canceling because sometimes there's a fallout? At least that's how it used to be. Like, if you would cancel a show, especially last minute, unless there was something tragic that happened, you were usually kind of blacklisted from that, either that venue or that booking agent or whatever the case, maybe that other band. And that could cause problems, especially if you needed to book that area. Or if that was, one of the, run of clubs or venues that you would normally play. In some regard, it's in bad business. So we're going to talk about that and some of our feelings, personal experiences. We're all not saints in this. I mean, everybody's had an issue one way or the other. And sometimes you try to do your best to work through the issue. And I guess what we're going to talk about, is it worth working through those issues when you're representing your brand, your band, and all? So, Chris, what do you think? Cancel or not cancel?
We have played, when I say we, my one band, Seeds of Perdition, there have been many times where we've had a sick member and we did the show anyway. Now, obviously, if our drummer was down and out, then, that would be very different because you can't really do it without a drummer. I mean, I guess you could. You try not to. But there have been times where it would just be 3 of the 5 of us. I mean, that was pretty much as low as we'd be able to get down in a band and still pull it off. And some of those shows, weren't all that awful, considering there was only 3 of us. Me, a guitar player, and a drummer. We know our stuff well enough that we're able to just run it through our mind, like, as we're playing it, knowing what's coming up, how many times we're doing this. And I'm not going to say we were completely free of mistakes, but we were able to pull it off through the years. Like you were saying, back in the day, I could tell you, I never remember canceling. I can't tell you, up till COVID, I don't remember canceling less than a handful of shows. And obviously not because of me, because I'll do it. I'm sure you have. I've played with a fever. I'll never forget one time we were playing St. Patty's Day in Philadelphia, and I was sick as a dog. I had a fever. So during the other bands, so I was sitting in the car, bundled up with the heat cranked on, trying to sweat my fever out. And then, I would watch the clock, and then I would go back in when the band was changing over just to make sure nothing changed in times. Go back out to my car, and I did the show. I mean, and I've performed sick many times. I performed hurt. I performed with a bad ankle and a bad leg and, sick as a dog. And so I myself have never been the cause of a cancel, knock on wood. But I have been, down that pike where we've had to cancel. Now, obviously, when you and I talk about canceling or not to cancel, I just want to make it clear that we're not talking about family emergencies or deaths, because that kind of stuff does take place. I feel like I'm jumping around here and I apologize, but there's a conversation I have with my band, and this is a conversation I've always had with any band I've been in. If a member of the band can't do it, but the band can still do it, my first question is that member okay with the rest of the band still doing the show? And if that member is okay, then we do the show without them. I mean, it sucks. Like, I hate to do it without them because I want the whole band to be there. As a matter of fact, Seeds just had a conversation a couple weeks ago. We have a show coming up in the future that one of the guitar players isn't going to be able to make it because of a prior commitment. So I said to him at rehearsal, I said, well, listen, are you okay with, us doing the show without you? And he was like, absolutely. Don't not cancel. So there has to be that. Like, there has to be that conversation of going, listen, like, what is, I don't want to say the rule, but what is the understanding that we're going to put in place for a band about canceling or not to cancel, right? I have my personal feelings about it, and I'm trying not to put my personal feelings about it because I don't have kids and I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I believe in having a commitment, and if you make that commitment, then you're there. And obviously things happen, and we're not all the same. So that doesn't make me any better, and it doesn't make someone else worse. It's personal preference, and I totally understand that. So you have to have that understanding. Do we cancel? Like, what is the stipulations? Can you get by? Obviously, the conversation ends when you don't have a drummer, unless you're able to pull off a set that you don't need a drummer. If your music is, if you guys can pull off, or you ladies can pull off as an acoustic act, then I say go for it, man. Whatever it takes not to cancel a show, you do not cancel that show, because I think that it does hurt your brand. It does get people talking. I believe there are a lot more club owners and promoters and booking agents that have a better understanding about cancellations now. I don't think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think in 2023 that canceling a show puts that black mark on your project as an artist as it did back when we were younger. I think because canceling nowadays is such a thing, right? I'm like, I've known bands that canceled because they didn't want to go on first. I've known bands that canceled because they just didn't feel like going to the show. Like, the show's already been booked, and the guy and the band's like, man, we don't really feel like driving to the show, or, it's raining out. There have been many bands that I've been on bills with, and then when the email or the message comes through from the promoter or the club owner, this is how Saturday night's going to go, and then the band finds out that they're first, and all of a sudden they're not playing. I mean, it happens. I see it more frequent than you would probably believe if I showed it to you, because canceling is such a thing. I mean, even in your bigger bands, like now, and we've talked about this before on past shows, buying tickets to shows, like buying insurance, is not an odd thing. Like I never, and we've talked about this before, I've never bought insurance for tickets ever. Now I buy it every show because canceling happens all the time. I hate to come across this way, but I gotta say it. I feel like ever since COVID happened, and I'm not blaming COVID or political, that's not my intention, but I feel like ever since that, it gave the okay for artists to cancel, whatever it may be. Even the bigger artists cancel for whatever reason. It just causes a lot of issues. And I think in 2023, I think that I think it's looked upon as, that's okay. They canceled for whatever reason.
I agree with you. I think it's become a norm. It's become an accepted norm. And again, early on with the COVID, okay, it was real hard to say, well, no, you don't have it, or you do have it, or whatever. Well, everybody was still running on fear, and, of course, distance was the key. So everybody was like, okay. But I've been in the same situations of you. I was at a show just, within the last 6 months. The first band canceled the day of. The last band canceled 40 minutes before their set. Oof. I was like, I've had bands, we've booked the show's coming up, and 2 days before they go, yeah, we just can't work that into our schedule. Well, yeah, but you already booked it. Like, someone said yes. I don't understand, like, so yeah. Cancellations on shows have always been a thing with bands, right? And a lot of times you don't see those bands very long because they're having internal issue maybe, or they can't get it down to a science in terms of, maybe somebody didn't tell somebody else, or I don't know. It could be anything,
Right.
Somebody has a bad vehicle, or like we talked about this in another show just briefly, like excuses have become outrageous and acceptable, because if somebody uses an excuse and you're like, well, yeah, I've used that excuse, or, no one wants to call anybody out because now that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
5-10 years ago, canceling a show was still oftentimes, especially if you were dealing with a veteran venue and or booking agent, I mean, you were blacklisted for a little bit. Maybe not completely shut down, but you were, looked over quite often. Unfortunately, everybody's had to pull out of a show at one time or another. Like, if you've been doing this long enough, it happens.
Yeah,
but
of course.
If your numbers, if your batting average is starting to go up in your cancellations, then we're looking at something a little different, right?
Yeah.
But if you have hundreds and hundreds of shows and you can count the shows that you've canceled on one hand and you don't need your thumb, well, then that's a pretty good track record, especially in this business. I mean, transportation issues happen.
Yeah,
I was
happens.
I was on tour last fall. We had transportation issues in between gigs, and we had to make a call, and we did. We actually had repairs done. By the time the repair is done, we would have never made it to the next venue. So there was, and thankfully we were working with a good booking agency. They actually were able to get us something that we could get to, and we did a last-minute fill-in. So it worked out for almost everybody, but it's not something that we would do. And, it's like I said, it's happened. But we've played shows without singers, without bass players. It is very difficult to do it without a drummer. However, we have done some acoustic shows.
Yeah, you guys can. Yeah, you guys can.
Yeah. And we've done it, we've done shorter sets. We've done longer sets because of other bands canceling. Yeah. Which goes to say, cancel or not to cancel, that's the one thing. But the bands then that have to deal with a band that has canceled last minute, and you know how that is. That's usually either they push the show back, so it starts a little later. They ask everyone to play a little longer set. I was just on another show just a few months ago. Had the show start a little later, 15, 20 minutes later. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is a lot. In some cases, that's someone's whole set.
Yeah.
And then they ask you to play a little longer. Can you play a little longer? Can you cover this time? Can you? And for a band that is working, that would behoove you to be prepared. Always have something more. Just in case. It's always good to be over-prepared in this case. Have more. A lot of people get uptight. They go, oh, man, I didn't get through my whole set. Yeah, but you got through a set, and they didn't pull you off earlier, right? We've been given, a half-hour set, and they cut you at 24 minutes.
Right.
Because they're getting uptight because they themselves are running behind, or the band before you took too long, so they start cutting stuff. So that's different. But, you do the best you can, whatever. But if you have that opportunity, right, that's you honing your skill and being prepared.
Yeah.
And then you're given this opportunity, and you can say, yes, I can. And not, no, I can't. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it is sometimes a little bit of a struggle for the bands that are there and bands cancel. Because now you're scrambling, you're trying to figure out, especially for the venue, well, how am I going to extend this night now? Because if I lose my entertainment, I may lose the patrons, which then they lose money. And then that's usually where the bands that have canceled get blacklisted.
Yep.
Right? But like you're saying now, it's become a little bit more, because even venues have canceled shows. Don't you, right? The day of, look, we're canceling the show, sorry. For whatever, we're understaffed. Somebody's sick. They don't even say COVID anymore. It's just somebody sick. Yeah. Right?
Real quick, not to interrupt you, but I want to get started. You could even look at it and a big picture, kind of going what you said. So let's do this. So a band cancels, the night gets hurt, patrons, money's lost. So then the owner, booking agent, whatever, goes, and you and I talked about this earlier tonight, they go, well, too many local, we'll say metal, because that's what you and I are in. Too many local metal bands cancel. So I'm not going to book local metal anymore.
Right.
I'll book bands that are more reliable, whether it be any other kind of music or bands. But listen, as a local struggling indie artist, as we are, stuff like that, if it hurts a whole show, then I mean, it really could hurt the bar, and the bar may not want any of us back, not just you. May not want any of us because, we can't pull it together and to cover it.
Right.
It could be ugly.
It can be. It can be ugly for everybody. And like you said, it's that one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, right? And now you're saying, well, listen, local metal acts just aren't drawing. And I can't count on these guys. They don't have a good work ethic. Let me bring in a tribute band, which has been a rise since the floodgates have opened post-pandemic. Tribute acts, cover acts are definitely, they're a draw. People want to guarantee. And the venues want to guarantee. The patrons want to guarantee. They don't want to have to guess. And they don't want 5 bands where, it's all different stuff anymore. They want to know exactly what they're getting. And I mean, I can understand some of that, but that does not help your local scene, unfortunately. You canceling shows and it's a regular occurrence because you got somebody that has an issue in the band, maybe a substance issue, maybe an authority issue, maybe an attitude or a behavioral issue. I mean, all that band has to consider, why are we constantly canceling shows? And I've been with bands that seem to cancel shows a lot. Why are you canceling shows?
It's hard, man. Like, it's hard for bands to get fans as it is. So you finally get fans, they come out to see your band, and you're not there.
Right.
And it sucks to see people's faces when they go, oh, they're not here?
Right.
Yeah. Perfect example. I had a show over the summer. It was a big show. The bands had been booked forever. One band bailed out, day of. And a lot of people came to see that band. And the look on people's faces were super disappointed because they weren't there. And you just hope that those people don't turn around and leave, which thankfully they didn't. But you could lose. You really could lose people. And, you could lose people as fans because if you're a band that does it on the daily, then people just go, I'm going to stop showing because I don't know if this band's ever going to be here, when they do book a show.
Case in point, years ago, now we're talking 25, almost 30 years ago, I guess, Guns N' Roses, they were starting to go through a turbulent time and they were starting to cancel shows.
Yeah.
And riots were breaking out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Axl was super late. Or he'd start the show and then he'd walk off. And then mayhem ensues, right?
Yeah.
And if you remember that the band fell apart and then they tried to do all this other stuff and, Chinese Democracy took like 6,000 years to complete with 700 million different artists. And they had lost a lot of, the band itself had lost a lot of integrity with the fans, right? People were like, I don't want to deal with them anymore. Now, that's not necessarily the case today. You get that band back up on the thing and they're selling out, whatever. But even you said it was kind of getting tiring. So, you were also talking a bigger band, but for a time, Guns N' Roses was definitely like washed up, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was due to the way things were happening there, internal problems, whatever. But the fans were paying for it because shows were canceled. And then venues were paying for it because they had to reimburse these fans. And then the insurance had to kick in to people that were injured and the destruction. And I mean, you can read a lot about that stuff on, the internet about, there's even video about it. Even Axl getting involved in the mayhem of destroying stuff, Yeah. So, case in point, but like Chris was saying earlier, and even to that point, it was early last year, even Eddie Trunk was saying it's becoming too convenient for bands to cancel because of COVID. Like if ticket sales were down and they knew it, all of a sudden somebody got COVID. Now, he wasn't pointing fingers and he wasn't saying so-and-so and all that kind of stuff. That was one of the things I kind of agreed with him. Yeah, if you didn't want to go on late or you didn't want to be the opening act or whatever the case may be, or you didn't like the lineup, all of a sudden I had COVID. And most people, what are you going to do? Go to the person's house and give them a rectal exam and go, hey, now you don't have COVID? No, it's like it's the last place you want to be, right? So you're using that tactic. Like I said, we played shows without singers, and that's tough, especially since we're a vocal-oriented and driven band, right?
Yeah.
And things are built around that. So have we done it? Yeah, we've done it. We've done some relatively big shows. We try not to do it so that when we're booking shows now, we're given the date or we're presented with whatever, and it's put to the band, can we do this? We're at a point now, it's like we're not going to do a show unless we're all in it together. Because in the long run, and you were starting to say this earlier, it's really not the best outlet for our music, our brand. We're not at full function, not at full force. We're kind of under complement. And that's not where we want to place the music. Now, if we had, and again, we had booked these shows and something came up, singer couldn't make it, singer was sick, drummer was injured, bass player had some family issues to whatever, then that's different. And you give the venue, you tell the venue, the booking person, this is what we have. Listen, here's the thing, we're prepared to play. We're going to be missing one of our soldiers here. If you're all right with that, we're all right with that. And we let the audience know, hey, listen, we're going to be doing an instrumental set. Unfortunately, our singer can't make it. Is it the greatest thing? No, it's not the greatest thing. But can it be done? Absolutely can be done.
And I think most people, probably 98, 99, maybe even 100, I think most people, if not all, they respect the fact that you didn't cancel, that at least you're up there doing what you can because you committed to doing the job.
Exactly. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
We were contracted to do 2 sets, and singer lost his voice during the first set. So we finished the first set without him singing. And we did the second set with no singing. Right. We did a show one time without the bass player. There was a last minute, he couldn't make it. We got lucky. We got someone to come in just to sing backing vocals to kind of fill in that gap. We did a real big show, a national show. Unfortunately, a bass player couldn't make that one. That's after we booked it. He just couldn't make it. We wanted a fill-in, and we got a fill-in. So we had enough time that we could get a fill-in. We actually did that a couple times. We've had to get a fill-in. And is it the same? No. Did we get through it? Yeah. Did people like it? Yeah, it worked. Because like you said before, most people don't know the music, or they're not that familiar with the music. And if you're putting on a good show is a good show. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
100%. Right? And like I said, we've done acoustic. And I actually, believe it or not, I was told, oh, you can't do acoustic and metal, and you can't do original metal that nobody knows acoustically. Why not? I'm doing metal electric that nobody knows. What's the difference? And it works out really good. We've done full nights of acoustic. We did early last year, we were the only band for the night. We did 3 full sets, all different material. We were able to play for 3 hours, 3 sets of nothing but acoustic. And it's great. It's less equipment. It doesn't kill your ears. People seem to like it, you know.
Yeah.
We even did, one year we did a half hour of acoustic, and then we followed with an hour of full band electric, right? Gave the people a little bit, gave them a break, warm up. Yeah. And it's fun. You'll find ways around it if you're working towards that, right? You figure out a way around it. Thankfully, I haven't missed any shows, but we're at a point now that, like I was saying earlier, that if we can't get the date to work, we just have to pass on it. And we, sometimes we pass on good shows. It's like, listen, the best thing for us at this point, and this is what people need to do. I've said this before, if you got to work that night, if you have to be somewhere in the morning and there's all these possibilities of excuses popping up at the last minute, don't book the show.
Yeah, that's right.
Just
Don't
go listen.
Yep.
Thank you for the opportunity. Unfortunately, we can't do the show. If you can consider us for later shows down the line, we'd be more than interested to maybe do something in the near future. And that's it. Yep. That's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear you go yes them to death and then you pull out the last minute, because people start counting on that. Oh, I got this band and I got this band. They're on the bill. People print up tickets. Right, with that stuff. They print up posters. They do advertising. They sponsor boosts, whatever. Nowadays, a lot of people will do little videos and they pop them up on Instagram and Facebook and Reels or something. I think they're called now, right? Is that something like that? Mm-hmm. That stuff doesn't just magically appear. You know what I mean? It isn't magically delicious. Somebody's got to spend some time and sometimes some money. So there's, and then all of a sudden that band isn't there. You have to retract all that stuff. And like Chris was saying earlier, it just kind of puts a mark. Like, even if it doesn't blacklist you, there will be that idea. You know what? I asked that band the last time, and they just didn't They didn't come through.
Yeah.
So let me go. You kind of get sidestepped, and if you do that one too many times, it's hard, you know. And listen, after a while, musicians in the scene start knowing who the bands are. And Chris has said this before.
Yep.
You know who the problem childs are, you know, and you're always going to have them. And unfortunately, if it's putting a black mark on other bands of that genre, especially for a venue who then doesn't want to support the scene anymore because they keep having this repeat of the same scenario, well, it's doing nobody any justice, right? And that goes back to our episode we did on bands helping bands, right? How can bands better support bands? Book the show, do the show, support the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to buy people's merchandise. You don't have to go over and bring them, you know, Meals on Wheels or anything like that. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I agree.
I
agree. 100%.
Like we said before, these things will happen. They'll happen quite often. There's some things that, you know, they just happen. But if the band is in good communication, I don't know about you, I've been on shows where the band comes in and they're waiting for the other player and no one hears from them. That player just never shows up.
Yep.
What happened to him? I don't know. Well, did anybody call him while we tried? Or, no, we're not really talking to him. Well, then, did anybody tell him there was a show? I don't know. Not sure.
That's horrible.
You are listening to The Cosmic Voice with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels.
I was going to say, man, you know, and I always tell the story because I love this story, and I wish I remembered who it was, because I just don't. But many, many, many years ago, I was at a 3-day metal fest. Saturday afternoon, place was packed jammed. It was in North Jersey. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. There was 3 stages, so there was a stage in every room, and I remember hearing a guy just screaming, doing death metal vocals, and I'm like, this is weird. Like, I wonder what's going on. So I walk in, and it's a guy on stage all by himself. If I close my eyes, I could see him. Long brown hair, had a denim vest on, just screaming his lungs out. Here, come to find out that his band was booked to play this festival, and the night before they were in the hotel, because he told the story on stage. The night before the hotel, they got into a huge argument. Well, the band left them there. They just left. So he said, I'm doing the show anyway. So he stood up there for 20 minutes, just spewing lyrics, and he had the music in his head, and people loved him, bro. Loved him. And if I'm the only one out of 2,000 people that remember it, well, he did his job, because I have never forgotten it, ever. I wish I would have got the kid's name and just stayed in contact with him, because I would have, even the band name, I would have loved to remember who that was. But my man just stood up there by himself for 20 minutes, and people just cheered him on like he was a full band, man. And that's one of those things where people give you respect when you, again, it's not, you know, well, his was a different situation, but he went up there, right? Like, he fulfilled his commitment. Yeah. He didn't want to look bad.
No.
And because God knows what band he could be in. I mean, we don't know what he's doing right now. I mean, you know, who's to say that one of the promoters went, you know, that's kind of a class act. Like, that's a guy went up there, and, you know, you never know. So even if you do perform without a singer, or you do an acoustic drummer, you like to think that booking agent or promoter goes, you know what, at least they didn't cancel. They didn't play to their full potential, but they came up here, they fulfilled it, they bought drinks, had some food, whatever, made the club money. People came out, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, listen, it's a test of his character, his commitment. It's not optimal. It wasn't the optimal situation that he wanted. But people, like you said, there was a problem. He faced it. He did his best to overcome it. I'm sure he would have probably preferred to be with his band. But you got to give it to somebody like that that's like, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm doing it. Why pass it?
Yeah.
I worked hard to be here. Why not? You know, this is what I deserve. So
I agree.
That's really cool. And like you said, and people will respond to it. It's kind of like the underdog type of story, right? It's like, look at this guy, man. Yeah. It may not be the best, but then after a while you go, just because of the highlight of someone doing this in such a challenging light, it all sounds better, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
because it's like, you start cheering it on and people like it, and that's pretty awesome in a sense. It really is, man. It's like Rudy. You know what I mean? I get choked up every time. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. You know what I'm saying? Just get him out there, man. Just get him out there once, and people surprise you. So yeah, and somebody's going to say, well, listen, I don't care what people say about me or think about me, and if whatever. I get that, and you're right. We can't worry about so much of that. But at the same time, if you're trying to build a brand, you're building this business, you got to kind of cross your T's and dot your I's, right? If you're pissing everybody off along the way, you're not going to have any water left in the bucket. You're not going to get any water in the bucket when it's empty. You're going to go to the well, and people are going to be like, no, they're going to turn you away. So Chris was saying you please the booker, maybe the venue makes some money, fulfilled your obligation. That stuff goes a long way as you're building because it will come back to you. Because people will remember, hey, you know what? This guy did come through. Let's get this guy a shot. At least I know someone's going to show up. Someone's going to play.
Right, man.
That's right. Maybe we can have a talk and we can make sure that the whole band is here this time. But, whatever. But at least they don't check you off. Because once you're checked off, that's a hard road to travel. It's a hard road to get back in. Now, I don't know how it is so much today because things are so different. But years ago, venues talked to one another.
Yeah, man.
Sometimes the same person or group of people owned a string of venues. Right? Yeah. Different people ran them, but a lot of them had the same owners. But a lot of these guys worked together. They would share things. And listen, people talked. Hey, this so-and-so band or whatever. I see you got so-and-so. Good luck. Why? Well, this is,
it's true. It's true.
Maybe you don't cancel shows, but you go there and you cause problems.
Yeah, it's true.
Beer tabs and damaged equipment. I've been on shows where bands ran a tab, never paid for it. Bands stole the equipment from the house, and it's on video. A lot of these places, they have surveillance, so they know who it is, getting into confrontation with the audience. Like everybody thinks it's an Andy Kaufman routine. Well, maybe that works in the big leagues, but, in a little club, somebody gets beat up later on. I mean, I played a show, and a fight broke out, and then the fight went out into the parking lot, and then some guy got in the car, and he tried to run the person over. Actually hit him, unfortunately, but he didn't run him over. But, I mean, cops were there. It prolonged us going on. Like, everything had to shut down. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would have been best that they canceled the show that night. I don't know. So, but if you can't do the show, or if there's any reason that an excuse may come up, don't book the show. Your band should be on board, everybody on board. They should have the same goal. Like, hey, the goal is we book shows, we show up to the show, we put on the best show we possibly can. This way you can avoid canceling, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know there could be a possible problem, you need to pass on that show. That's my opinion.
No,
unless you have a backup
100%,
plan.
100%.
Like, and like Chris was saying early on, if you still want to do the show but one player can't, and they decide that, hey, we could still do the show if everybody's in whatever, do it. If there's a talk about, hey, you can maybe find a fill-in, do it. We had fill-ins, but that was a discussion and a decision that was made collectively by the band. We didn't all of a sudden say, oh, yeah, we're doing the show, and by the way, we have a fill-in.
Yeah.
That doesn't work either, right? I mean, especially if you're trying to keep things...
No.
Yeah, you're just causing yourself more grief.
More problems.
Yeah, more grief.
Yeah.
And chances are that person's going to not show up to some other shows. But at the same time, if you can do it without that person, one person down, and you feel that you're still delivering, then you do it. But like I was saying, for us now, we won't do that. Like, if we know there could be, we just avoid doing it. It's just, it's not best for the brand. That's my opinion.
No, I agree. 100%.
When you've canceled shows, and I'm sure you have, what was the issue? Just
fine.
so people can understand that it does happen, and sometimes you just can't do it any other way.
Usually it's been with a drummer, and usually it's either sickness or a family thing. Something happened, or, a personal issue within the family happened, or maybe someone passed away, or something like that. Because like I said, I don't ever remember. Yeah, it's usually, if we've ever canceled, it's usually because of a drummer situation, because we can't pull our stuff off, with no drummer.
Right, I've watched you guys play with one guitar player, with no bass player.
We played as a trio. I mean, we have, and if we can, we will. But, and for us, if you lose the drummer, then it's hard. But
right.
That's all it really was. If it's just, if it's some, he was sick or if there was a family emergency.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That kind of stuff happens. And if you're...
Of course.
Yeah,
of course,
I mean, and sometimes it's unavoidable. As we talked about before, that's where good communication comes in. The sooner you can let somebody know, the better.
Yes.
You give them an option or options.
Yep.
And sometimes let them make the call. Like, what do you think? Not full of compliment is best for the show? Some people say, nah, listen, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's okay. At least you gave them the option.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're calling up a half hour before, listen, we can't make it or something, that's... This is how you sometimes know it's BS that a band cancels, like, right before. Like, they didn't show up for... Not one person showed up for sound check or for load-in.
Yeah.
So it's already been a predetermined thing. And then they're not there at the show. It's like, well, if you're not going to play and you were scheduled to be there anyway, maybe come out and support it. That demonstrates then to the booker, to the venue, that you were really going to be there. And I've seen that hundreds of times.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's one of those things where it's just too easy to cancel. And then, they don't think beyond canceling. They cancel, and then that's it.
That's it, yeah. And they go on to the next thing. And I think that we're in a climate where it is becoming, for a lack of a better term, more acceptable and easy for bands to cancel. And venues just go, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I said earlier in the show, right? Like, I feel like in 2023... canceling isn't as looked down upon as it was when you and I were coming up.
No, and then you get bands going, man, or fans even go, man, the same bands are playing here all the time. It's the same band. Because they're going to do the shows because other bands aren't pulling their weight.
Right? 100%, dude. That is 100%.
Since we're post-COVID, things are pretty much back to not normal, but you know what I mean. Bands are back in full effect now. And there's a lot of bands coming up. A lot of new bands emerging. A lot of old bands disappeared. There's definitely a pool of bands. The issue is they're not all pulling their weight.
Right.
And I think that doesn't help the scene. Cancel or not cancel, how important is your brand, is your band, is the music, is what you're trying to achieve? How important is it to you to cancel that gig?
Yeah.
That's something you have to weigh up. This is just, stuff from our experience. We're not necessarily passing judgment or making judgment or anything like that. I mean, these things happen. Things happen. We've all experienced it, and it is unfortunate. It's always sickening when we have to cancel a show. And like I said, I can count it on 4 fingers, this band, over the last 12 years. You do what you have to do. You take it as it comes, but if you can't do the show, if you think there's going to be excuses, don't take the show. Don't take the show.
Yeah.
Got anything else you want to add?
Nope, that's it, brother. That is it.
All right, if you like that episode, check out some of our other episodes at www.thecosmickvoice.com. Step into the Cosmic Verse and fill that void. Thanks so much for listening. This is the Cosmic Voice. Be sure to check us out at thecosmicvoice.com. Like and follow us on Facebook at The Cosmic Voice. You can find The Cosmic Voice everywhere you listen to online podcasts, like Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, and so many more.
Okay, folks, that will do it for another episode of The Cosmic Voice. Mick and I would like to say thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
You're listening to The Cosmic Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business.